Max Verstappen laughs at the rest of the grid. Logan is at huge risk of losing his seat to a 17-year-old, and Lando Norris admits to making a huge mistake that cost him the front row. Let's get straight into the latest F1 news. Max Verstappen demonstrated his prowess during the sprint qualifying session at the Miami Grand Prix, securing pole position in front of Ferrari's Charles Leclerc. Although McLaren had shown strength in the first two sections of sprint qualifying, it was Max Verstappen from Red Bull who effectively utilized the soft tires in SQ3 to grab pole position. Charles Leclerc from Ferrari made a strong comeback after an error in practice. For most of the session, the track remained quiet until just over 3 minutes were left in the final part of sprint qualifying. The drivers headed out in close succession, forcing them to cautiously navigate the track to find some space for their crucial single flying laps. Sergio Perez from Red Bull was the first to set a flying lap time, recording a time of 1:28.876, which was 0.6 faster than Nico Hülkenberg from Haas. However, despite encountering a moment of oversteer through the chicane, Verstappen outperformed Perez's time by 0.2 of a second. Verstappen's time remained unbeatable until the checkered flag, with Leclerc finishing just 0.1 of a second behind, displaying an impressive recovery after missing most of the practice. Surprised by his successful pole position, Verstappen expressed his astonishment over the team radio, exclaiming, "LOL, what happened to the others? This was terrible. I'll take it," as it seemed Red Bull had not expected to have the advantage following SQ2. With Perez securing third place, the standout performance of the day came from Daniel Ricciardo, who finished fourth for RB, while his teammate Yuki Tsunoda was eliminated in Q2. Carlos Sainz of Ferrari claimed fifth place, trailing Leclerc by 0.3 of a second and falling nearly half a second short of the top time. McLaren's performance on soft tires was not as strong as their performance on the mediums. Oscar Piastri secured sixth place with his upgraded McLaren, while Lance Stroll emerged victorious in the Aston Martin battle, taking seventh place ahead of Fernando Alonso. Lando Norris finished ninth for McLaren, and Hülkenberg rounded out the top 10. In SQ2, Perez initially set the pace, but Norris demonstrated the effectiveness of McLaren's upgrades by surpassing Perez's time on the mediums by 0.3 of a second, achieving a time of 1:27.597. Verstappen was given only one lap to secure a good enough time to advance into the top 10. Starting his flying lap with just 2 minutes remaining in the session, he couldn't challenge the leaders but managed to qualify safely for SQ3. At the checkered flag, Norris held on to the top spot, 0.268 seconds ahead of Perez, with Leclerc taking third place, followed by Verstappen. Ricciardo, despite tapping the wall at turn 16, delivered a great lap to secure fifth place, ahead of Piastri, Alonso, and Sainz. Stroll and Hülkenberg completed the top 10. It was a challenging day for Mercedes, as both George Russell and Lewis Hamilton were eliminated, with Russell falling short by 0.0003 seconds and Hamilton by 0.041 seconds. Hamilton reported over the radio that he hit the wall exiting turn 16, which affected his drive down the subsequent straight. The stewards will also investigate an incident in the pit lane involving Hamilton, as the pit crew failed to follow the rules requiring them to wear helmets. Joining the Mercedes drivers on the sidelines after SQ2 were Esteban Ocon from Alpine, Kevin Magnussen from Haas, and Tsunoda. Having spun out during the practice session earlier on Friday, Leclerc wasted no time and went straight out on track at the start of sprint qualifying to maximize his time and familiarize himself with the tricky Miami Autodrome. Leclerc quickly increased his pace, securing third place with 2 minutes remaining in SQ1, behind the frontrunners Verstappen and Piastri. In the final 2 minutes, Piastri found himself involved in an incident as he approached Valtteri Bottas, who was significantly slower approaching turn 1. Piastri made a move on the inside, but as he entered the corner, his Sauber made contact with the side pod of the McLaren. Unfazed, Piastri communicated via team radio, stating, "If that's not a penalty, I don't know what is," while Bottas criticized his new race engineer, saying, "That was too late, man, I had no idea." The stewards decided to investigate the incident after the sprint qualifying session, but Bottas did not escape the elimination zone, with both he and his teammate Zhou Guanyu being knocked out. Williams drivers Alex Albon and Logan Sargent, along with Pierre Gasly from Alpine, were also eliminated. Albon's best lap time was invalidated due to exceeding track limits at the chicane, resulting in Sargent outperforming Albon for the first time as Williams teammates. Alonso was fortunate to continue after a forceful impact against the wall while exiting turn 16. Onboard footage showed Alonso checking his mirrors for damage as he accelerated away from the corner. Leclerc also had a minor collision with the wall at the same spot, though less severe than Alonso's incident, adding another moment of drama to the session. The session concluded with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri leading the timesheets in their upgraded McLarens, followed by Alonso, Verstappen, and Magnussen. Lando Norris had a strong start in the opening 2 stages of sprint qualifying in Miami, but things went downhill for him in SQ3, leaving the McLaren driver feeling quite frustrated. The merch giveaway is still on. To participate, please subscribe to the channel. If we manage to reach 1,000 subscribers by the Miami Grand Prix race, I will be selecting 10 lucky subscribers to receive merch. Thank you for your support. During this sprint weekend in Miami, Norris was driving the highly upgraded McLaren MCL38, and he demonstrated its capabilities by topping both the SQ1 and SQ2 segments. This performance made him the favorite for securing pole position in the 19-lap race. However, when Norris switched to soft tires for the final stage, McLaren's pace drastically dropped. As a result, Norris had to settle for P9 on the starting grid, with his teammate Oscar Piastri in P6. Norris was quick to acknowledge his mistakes and accept responsibility for the disappointing outcome. He admitted that he had pushed too hard and made a couple of errors in turn 1, which led to a significant spiral of negative events. Despite the setback, Norris recognized that the team had done a good job and the upgrades were working well. He was pleased with almost everything except for the final result. He believed that the pace of the car was very good, in fact, probably one of the fastest. Although disappointed, he remained determined to give his best in the upcoming race. McLaren Racing CEO Zak Brown acknowledged that the team needed to address the issue with the soft tires after their disappointment in sprint qualifying. He mentioned that the preparation for SQ3 was not up to the required standard and expressed confidence that they could learn from this experience to improve the rest of their race weekend. Brown admitted that the soft tires didn't work well on either car, and they would have to evaluate how they approached the final lap. Both drivers felt that they hadn't executed it perfectly, but the team's preparation for the last run fell short. The CEO acknowledged a slight disappointment based on the earlier stages of qualifying, but believed they would qualify better in the future and had confidence in their race pace. McLaren's SQ3 issues provided an opportunity for Red Bull's championship leader, Max Verstappen, to secure pole position, which came as a surprise to him, to say the least. Adrian Newey feels honored to hear Lewis Hamilton's desire for him to join Ferrari. However, it seems that this is not a possibility at the moment. It was recently announced on the eve of the Miami Grand Prix that Adrian Newey, the renowned Formula One designer, would no longer be involved with Red Bull's Formula One operations, effective immediately. He will completely leave the Red Bull team by the end of the first quarter of 2025. In the meantime, his focus will be on Red Bull's RB17 hypercar project. Considering the impressive 25 titles claimed by Formula One machinery designed by Newey, a number that is likely to increase in 2024 as Red Bull continues to dominate, it is highly likely that any team on the grid would be interested in enticing him to return to the series. However, for now, Newey intends to cherish and enjoy life rather than make new plans for Formula One. He shared with Sky F1 that he, along with his wife Mandy and their dogs, will probably travel and experience life by possibly getting a motorhome and exploring France. He also mentioned that when the time is right, he might stumble upon a new adventure while in the shower. But as of now, he does not have a specific plan. If Newey decides to make a comeback in Formula One, speculation suggests that Ferrari would be his most probable destination. In fact, 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, set to join Ferrari in 2025, expressed his strong desire to work with Newey. While Newey appreciates Hamilton's kind words, he reiterated that he will take a break once his tenure with Red Bull concludes. Newey's potential departure from Red Bull, timed with the introduction of the new 2026 regulations, could enable him to influence another team's approach to the forthcoming changes in chassis and power unit regulations. When asked if he wants to be a part of this new era, Newey replied that he genuinely enjoys regulation changes. He explained how the current set of regulations represents the most significant changes since the introduction of flat-bottom cars in 1983. He expressed his delight in the challenge of researching and designing the current car, as well as its subsequent evolutions. Looking back, he admitted that he was initially uncertain about the regulations, but found the experience enjoyable. Throughout his Formula One career, Newey has designed championship-winning cars for Williams, McLaren, and, most notably, Red Bull. While Logan Sargeant has more work to do, it seems he won't lose his seat to Kimi Antonelli for now. Antonelli, a Mercedes junior, is not yet 18, the minimum age for an FIA super license. There's a request for a dispensation to grant Antonelli a license before he turns 18. It's unclear who made the request, but it's not believed to be Mercedes. This fuels rumors that Antonelli could replace Sargeant at Williams later in the F1 2024 season. Antonelli is currently competing in his first Formula 2 season and is tested with Mercedes Formula 1. Williams team boss James Vowles mentioned that Sargeant needs to earn his place, but didn't dismiss the possibility of Antonelli replacing him. However, Vowles revealed he hasn't spoken to Antonelli since Abu Dhabi in the previous year. He emphasized the importance of Sargeant improving his performance and meeting the team's expectations. Sargeant struggled to outperform his teammate Albon in 2023 and continues to do so in the 2024 season. Williams is waiting for their first point this year. Vowles acknowledged the desire to see Antonelli in a Williams car, but stated that the team's priority is improving the machinery. He also mentioned that discussions about drivers for the 2025-2026 seasons are ongoing, and it's too early to determine Antonelli's readiness for Formula One. Vowles does not have direct communication with Mercedes regarding Antonelli's test performance. Antonelli achieved his best F2 result in the recent Australia feature race, finishing 4th. Fernando Alonso humorously remarked that the Miami Sprint would lack excitement since we cannot engage in fights or similar activities, clearly still feeling the sting of his recent penalties and super license points. After receiving 3 penalty points on his FIA super license and a 10-second time penalty following a collision with Carlos Sainz during the previous China Sprint, Alonso had doubts about the value of participating in the Miami Sprint. Although he eventually decided to take part, he doesn't anticipate any intense battles, and therefore does not expect to derive much enjoyment from the sprint. When asked about Aston Martin's long-run pace after the sprint qualifying, Alonso responded, "I have no idea. We didn't do any long runs during FP1. Anyway, the sprint race is meaningless, especially because we are not allowed to fight or engage in any competition. No matter what we do, we receive penalties. So tomorrow is just a day for fun, but not for us. Not very interesting." Starting from P8 on the grid, Alonso may find himself in the midst of the action. He acknowledged the challenges experienced by all 10 runners in the final SQ3 stage as they transitioned from medium to soft tires. It was definitely difficult to gauge the track's grip while changing from the medium to the soft compound at the end. It was challenging, but everyone faced the same situation. "I believe we achieved our target of placing both cars in Q3. Let's see what tomorrow brings." With Lance Stroll securing a higher position than his 2-time world champion teammate, the Aston Martin team occupies the entire 4th row, with a bonus of Stroll doing so on used soft tires, saving a new set for tomorrow's qualifying in hopes of gaining an advantage during the sprint race. When asked if the revised rear wing on his AMR 24 would aid his progress in the sprint, Stroll optimistically replied, "Well, I certainly hope so. We'll find out what we can accomplish tomorrow." The Miami Sprint will commence with Max Verstappen of Red Bull starting from pole position. Daniel Ricciardo achieved his highest starting position of the season by finishing in the top 4 during the sprint qualifying session in Miami. After facing difficulties in the initial races of the 2024 F1 season, Daniel Ricciardo's fortunes took a positive turn with an outstanding performance in Miami. He secured the 4th position for the sprint race. During the second part of the session, Yuki Tsunoda failed to qualify, which was in stark contrast to Daniel Ricciardo's performance. The Australian driver set the 5th fastest time, allowing him to enter the top 10. Remarkably, Ricciardo outperformed his previous result in the 3rd session, SQ3, and secured the 4th fastest time. This impressive achievement saw him beat both Aston Martin's, the upgraded McLaren's, and even Ferrari's Carlos Sainz. Previously having a relatively uneventful season, Ricciardo has yet to score a single point. However, if he finishes within the top 8 in the sprint race, he will finally earn some points and break his streak. Speaking to Sky Sports F1 after the sprint qualifying, Ricciardo expressed his confidence, saying, "I've done it before, so I know I have it in me." He also expressed his surprise at obtaining a second-row start, admitting he didn't expect to qualify that well. Ricciardo felt good during the second session. Q2, and anticipated that his lap time would be sufficient for Q3. Initially expecting a fifth-place starting position for Q3, he was thrilled to secure fourth place. Ricciardo acknowledged the challenges posed by the track, describing it as tricky. He specifically mentioned the difficulty of nailing the middle sector and navigating the chicane. He also mentioned tapping the wall exiting turn 16, but affirmed that it did not impact his performance. Despite pushing himself to the limit, he was unsure if it contributed to his lap time. Nevertheless, he expressed immense pride in his achievements during the day. Ricciardo's resurgence coincided with receiving a new chassis from RB at the Chinese Grand Prix. The team also implemented a new floor body and diffuser in Miami. Ricciardo observed that everything seems to be heading in the right direction now, mentioning the team's continuous updates over the past few races. When asked if he dares to dream of a podium finish from his fourth-place starting position, Ricciardo responded positively, saying, "Certainly, I can dream of everything." He further explained that starting near the front was advantageous in avoiding the chaos typically found in the mid-pack. He hoped to keep up with the leaders at the beginning of the race, securing a good amount of points in this shorter race format.